Hermes Press fans. As many of you are aware, we have numerous titles that we reprint on a continuing basis. And then we find a title that we find interesting. For instance, Milconiff's Mail Call, and we do the entire Milconiff's Mail Call in one issue. That was quite some time ago. But we do that periodically when I find a strip continuity that I think is worthy of reprinting and it fits into one book. One of our mainstays is Johnny Hazard, Frank Robbins' great strip that ran from 1944 to 1977. As a matter of fact, we have all of the black and white material for that book. About 3.5 years ago, we solicited for sale the Sundays, and we had most of them, but not all of them, and I spent the next 3.5 years trying to track down the 22 we had missing. So we ran the original solicitation was from 1944 to 46. Now, the published book is from 1944 to 1947. See right there? This is a humongous book. This book reprints the Sundays in their full size. And it also prints some really nifty advertising art full size. And it has a number of essays. This is the ultimate book on Frank Robbins. Here's the table of contents. This is printed on 120-pound wood-free paper to simulate what a comic strip would look like. Here's the foreword by none other than Howard Chaykin, who's a big fan of Frank Robbins and Noel Sickles. Here is the very extensive essay detailing Frank Robbins' career by me, with lots of illustrations, original art. We have 2 of the original early Sundays in here that you'll see in here. Advertising art, early strips, more advertising art done by Frank Robbins. We have a focus section on what Frank Robbins did when he worked at DC Comics. And interestingly, and this is a really pretty significant piece of writing, Roy Thomas was kind enough to write an extensive essay about when Frank Robbins was at the House of Ideas, which is profusely illustrated with original art from the House of Ideas, especially the continuity that Frank Robbins worked on called The Invaders, which takes place during the Second World War. Now, what's interesting about this book is that we reproduce the Sundays in their full size. And what I wanted to show you was, here is the first Sunday. Okay, this is the first Sunday, as you can see. And it's in really pretty decent shape, but not fantastic shape. Now here is the one in the book. It's been cleaned up. It's been made practically perfect. It looks just like you got it off the newsstands in 1944. Isn't that great? Look at it. Full size. And the whole book contains these. Now I will mention, and a big shout out to a couple of people who assisted us. One of them is Buddy Lordy. This book would not be finished if it wasn't for Buddy Lordy. He emailed me and said, "Are you ever going to do the Sundays?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd do them, but we went to Ohio State. We looked all over the world for the ones we're missing. In color, we have them in black and white, but we don't have them in color. We're not going to digitally color them. They won't match. They won't look very good. They'll look too perfect, and they'll be wrong. We want to scan these things off the tear sheets and then digitally reconstruct them." And he said, "Well, I happen to have the ones you're missing." So he lent them to us, and we used them. And we were able to complete the continuity. So a shout out to Mr. Lordy. Thank you very much. You'll be getting a really cool copy of this book with a big thank you. Now, this book reprints a number of the story continuities and runs to 1947. It reprints them in their full size as tabloids. It has, let's see, Just Another Day in the Air Force. That's the first continuity. Sunday continuity begins July 2nd, 1944, runs to 1945. Searching for Brandy, Balinese Dancing Idol, Searching for the Metal Lighter Than Air, The Java Sea Pirate, which runs from 10/6/1946 to 1/12/1947. So we have that many continuities. We have 5 continuities in here. And these continuities have never been reproduced from the tear sheets or from proofs. They have been reproduced, and I don't know how they were reproduced. To me, to my eye, it looks like somebody got some black and white proofs and recolored them. The coloring does not match the original tear sheets that we have, and a lot of the line work is missing. These were scanned at 600 dpi off the original files, and then they were photoshopped extensively without removing any of the halftones, without manipulating the screens or doing anything which would take away from the authentic feel of these strips. And yes, they're not all perfect because some of these were incredibly imperfect. Here's an example of two more. And since we had these from different sources, I think we had these from 4 different sources. You have the ones that we have, which we own. Here's an example of what they look like. And these are in pretty good shape, but there's bleed through on some of them. There's extensive bleed through on some of them. There's discoloring on some of them. And these strips are 60 years old, over 60 years old. And there are no proofs. There are no press proofs on these things. King Features doesn't have them. Michigan State has black and white press proofs, which, as I said, you can't use. You can use them as a reference if a piece is missing to seam it back in and clone in the colors. But you can't print them unless you want a black and white Johnny Hazard. And it loses a lot of its attractiveness when you print it in black and white, although if that's all you can get, that's all you can get. Dragon Lady Press did a really super black and white reprint of some of these continuities. I believe it was Dragon Lady Press back in the 80s. And I think they had Alex Toth, the original covers for them. Unfortunately, Alex isn't around. Otherwise, we would have asked him for some thoughts. But we got Howard Chaykin instead, and Howard is very appreciative of and very knowledgeable about Frank Robbins and is a big fan of the strip. It is an artist's artist strip. Anyway, the book is very large. You can see we reprint these strips very, very conscientiously. And let me make a point, once again, for those perfectionists. You cannot have perfection when you do a strip reprint where you're using tear sheets that are 60 and 70 years old. We do a ton of work on these things to get them as good as you can get them using modern technology. We're not going to repaint these things. We're not going to remove the screens and the halftones and boil them down to one color when they were never printed that way and they were never intended that way. Some of these things come out extraordinarily well, and other ones come out less than extraordinarily well, but as well as we could do them. And we have 2 people working on these strips for quite some time to get them just right, or as right as they could be. I'm very satisfied with this book, and I think it documents an extremely important strip in a form, this book, that I think does justice to one of the really great action-adventure comic strips. The thing ran for over 30 years. And Frank Robbins did the strip. Didn't have a lot of assists on it. Did it mostly himself. It's his labor, and it reflects it. And we're now on the 8th issue of the dailies, and we now have 1 issue of Sundays. The bad news is there's only going to be 1 issue of the Sundays. But I believe this is representative of the early work, and I believe that it's a fine example of Robbins' art and his craft. And we have a lot of essay material and documentary material in this, and I think this is a great tribute to one of the great artists in comic strips and comic books, Frank Robbins. I just wish he was around to see it. That being said, the book is $80. The price did go up due to President Trump's tariff because that raised the price of the production of the book. Hence, we have to pass that on to you, dear fan of Frank Robbins. That being said, I believe this is the definitive, ultimate version of the Frank Robbins Johnny Hazard Sundays. I think it is a fine tribute to his work and the strip, and it's a lot of fun. And if you like B movies and you like that period, and you like film noir, and you like femme fatales, and really good adventure, which is on par with Terry and the Pirates, I'm trying to think, Null Sickles' strip, which actually Frank Robbins worked on, Scorchy Smith. This book is well within the quality of those strips as well. The cast of characters is great. Everything about this strip is great. It's a classic. And I don't say that too frequently about strips, because a lot of them, even though they're well known, really don't hold up very well. This does. It's just like watching a great B movie. The only difference is it's in color. Anyway, that being said, the book is here. It's in transit. The advances are here. The book is in transit from China. It'll be here in about 2.5 weeks. It'll be available first through us, so all of our orders will be filled first. A Diamond will get it, and then it'll be available through bookstores and Amazon.com and that sort of thing. However, one caveat. When I print these books, because I understand that there's a very limited audience, as an incentive to buy them, and because of budgetary considerations, I limit the print runs of these books. This particular book has a print run of 1,000 copies. I'm not going to reprint it. I'm not going to reprint it in a paperback version. It's not cost effective. If you want this book, buy it now. It will sell out. I believe right now, based on the orders that we have from Diamond and the book market and direct orders that we have through Hermes Press, we've sold over half of the print run, and the book hasn't even come in yet. So it will sell out. The reason I'm telling you this is because frequently I get emails, and Sabrina gets emails, our managing editor, and Candace Hardner, who's our senior editor, gets, why did you only print 1,000 copies? It's because we want to sell out the print run, and we can't print a lot of copies to keep in our warehouse and incur the storage and incur the printing costs on something where we can make a limited print run and sell it out and be done with it. So if you want it, buy it now, because 6 months from now, somebody on eBay, and I find this rather humorous, will be selling this book for $300. I didn't say that people would be buying it. I mean, frequently I see a lot of our Phantom books, ones that are out of print, like number 3 and number 5 and number 6. The ones that are out of print and have been out of print for some time, I see them selling for $300 and $400 and $500. And I say to myself, they should have bought it when it came out. And then I get emails, why don't you reprint it? And the answer is, when we solicited reprints of issue 3, for instance, we didn't get an adequate order to pay the printing costs. So we didn't reprint it. So I'm giving you a little insight into how we set print runs and how we do things from an economic standpoint. Because while we support great art, great artists, great continuities, and we print a lot of art books, we're not doing this so we can lose money. We have to make money because we have to pay the people we have the licenses from, and we have to pay our staff that does all this sterling work on these books. Consequently, fans, if you want the book, order it. It will sell out. That happens frequently. We think it's a good thing. The bad part of it is then somebody comes around 3 months later and says, gee, I want that book. And we say, we're really sorry, we can't supply you with it. That being said, the book will be available through the general sales channels in about 3 to 4 weeks. It'll be available from us in about 2.5 weeks. I think it's just the definitive version of the Sundays. I'm very happy with it. I'm proud of it. I've looked at it a number of times. It's like my Christmas present. My Christmas present to myself. Anyway, that being said, any questions, email us at Hermes Press. And the last thing I have to say is, everybody have a really good holiday. That's all for now. Bye-bye.